Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the University of California Cooperative Extension Food Systems Resiliency Spotlight Series. This is webinar number 5, and we're so happy that you're able to join us. And a special thanks to our out-of-state and international participants. We're really glad you are able to join us today for the presentation on thinking inside the box, farm boxes and local supply chain resilience during the pandemic. Just a few things to remind you that we will be recording today's webinar so that we can use it for continued education. We're going to mute all of you to prevent the background noise. And if you have questions for the presenters, we'd like you to please use the Q&A box and then use the chat box for just comments or non-question conversational items that you'd like to use. And you can find those on the view options, or excuse me, at the bottom of your screen. There's a Q&A button and a chat button. Next slide, please. What we're really trying to do with this series of webinars is reimagine our food system. I think that in our present circumstances, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we're realizing that there's probably better opportunities or more opportunities to fortify our production, our processing, and our accessibility to foods and food resilience. And we're hoping that through the conversations and sharing that we can develop new partnerships and new systems to help address this. Next slide. Our objectives for today are really to improve knowledge and understanding, identify and share resources, both existing and new, and there will be some electronic information provided via a resource kit for everyone. We'll also identify information gaps and opportunities for further collaboration and participation, and then also brainstorm new ideas and share what ifs in the event of this COVID-19 and food systems resiliency. Next webinar, number 6, will be on Victory Gardens Then and Now, and that will be on September 22nd from 10 to 11. So if you haven't registered for that, please feel free to go ahead and do that. Next slide. So before we actually kick it off with the panel, I want to do a little introduction that during COVID-19, the demand for locally sourced food has gone up. In addition to increased demand for traditional community-supported agriculture, or CSA programs, we've also seen a number of new farm box programs arise. Today's speakers represent 4 different organizations who have been involved in creating and operating new farm box programs over the last 6 months. While they have this local supply chain innovation in common, they also represent a spectrum of experiences, from different business models, cooperative, nonprofit, and volunteer, to different geographies, urban and rural. And through this panel discussion, we will learn about the programs they're operating, how they've adapted, and their perspective on maintaining resilient food supply chains through the pandemic and beyond. And it's my pleasure to introduce Lucy Diekman, who is our panel moderator today. Lucy?
Thanks, Lynn. And it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists. We have a really wonderful group of speakers who are very involved in marketing and distribution for small farmers, and also providing locally grown food to communities throughout the state. The speakers are on the slide in the order that they'll be speaking. So first we'll hear from Tania Zuñiga, who's a business advisor with Kitchen Table Advisors. Then we'll hear from Andy Ollove, who's a program director with Fresh Approach. Odile Morrison, a board member with CalaverasGROWN, and then finally Tim Page, who is a co-founder of Feed Sonoma. I think, Tania, you can begin.
All righty, thank you, Lucy. Well, I am Tania Zuñiga. I am a business advisor with Kitchen Table Advisors, one of the 3 business advisors we have here in the San Benito, Monterey, and Santa Cruz County. Before I start my presentation, I want to really share a quick client overview. We have in this region farmers, right? And 70% of them have wholesale distribution channels like food hubs and distributors. The other 30% of our farmers have direct distribution channels like participating at farmers markets and having CSAs programs, mainly in the Silicon Valley and Bay Area. Next slide, please. Farmers, what we have been seeing, right, by the second, third week of March, right when COVID hit us, is that farmers with a direct distribution channels saw a spike on sales. More of them saw 50% within a few weeks only. And the main challenges these farmers face were, well, customer management, labor, finding capital, actually to kind of like supply to the increased demand, right? Finding capital to invest into installing cooling systems, getting larger trucks, buying packing materials. Only a few farmers in our region were affected by the farmers market closure. And usually these farmers markets belong to farmer markets associations, not well established or not mission aligned. Please, next. 50% of the farms with the strictly wholesale operations, or what we will call wholesalers, right, were able to pivot to other outlets. Outlets like farmers markets, CSAs, subsidized healthy food access programs, and community support of commerce initiatives like Farm to My Neighborhood. And actually that's the one that I am gonna be sharing more about right now. Please, next slide. So Farm to My Neighborhood is a project from Terra Farm in partnership with Kitchen Table Advisors, with us. This is a grassroots initiative, right, that has three goals mainly, right? Is the first one, support small scale farmers. All the profits are going to the farmers. There's no fee for the using of this program, right? And this is a project that is volunteer based. The second goal, having access to local organic food. And the third one, building community through food. Please, next one. So this is a screenshot of the web page that Terra Farm has. I encourage you guys to visit the web page. You will find there more information about the project. You will find also the online store that we have or update weekly. You will find food blogs, testimonials, more pictures, and a lot more information about the farmers that we work with. Please, next slide. I am gonna share right now a few numbers with you, and these are numbers that we got from the last week of March. We started this project on March the 28th, all the way to the last week of July 2020. So we were able to sold 1,374 orders with a total dollar amount of $42,000. We got number of customers, 331, and the average dollar order per farm box was $31. It's important to know that this program didn't require any minimums for purchases, but in general, the average was $31 per box. Please, next. So the farmers, how this project works, right, is we have what we call farmer coordinators. In this picture, you can see a picture of Mariana Reyes with Narci Organics. She's one of our KTA clients, here in San Juan Bautista. This year, she was transitioning out of the Alba incubator to a new piece of land in San Juan Bautista. So we knew that obviously the yields wouldn't be the same this year. And with Maria, we helped Maria to take the decision to be one of the farmer pilots in this program or project, and things have worked really well for her. You can see also there the name of her two daughters, Angelica and Yesenia. They are both Fresno graduated students, and they both have been key, right, in the success of this project. Definitely farmers that unfortunately may not have the like family members willing to work or be part of the farm operation, and are then that probably is maybe a different in a different time I will be able to share that, but it's key for these farmers, especially the farmer coordinators that we are choosing to work with, to have a good circle of family members that are willing to support, because we all know that these kind of models are labor intensive at the time of packing, at the time of shipping. So over here also you can see a list of the different farmers that Maria has been working with, buying produce from them, making sure they are getting fairly paid for the produce they are buying, and treated with respect. And it's been actually an amazing way for Maria to expand her network. Please, let's go to the next slide. To this picture, you will see farmer Berta Magaña with her husband. Again, right, the names of her daughter, the grandchildren are also involved in this project. You are gonna see there the list of farmers that she's working with or are part of her network. Most of them are our Kitchen Table Advisors clients, are also part of the Alba incubator, farmers that are still in the Alba incubator or that are Alba alumni. Please, the next slide. Over here, we're going to talk a little bit about the communities involved. We have Palo Alto, we have Saratoga, we have Los Altos, Sunnyvale, San Jose, Fremont, and Oakland. Over there, it's one of the last pictures that we got at one of the farm visits that we had in San Juan Bautista, where actually Mariana Reyes is farming right now. Please, next slide. This is one of the main questions we get. Why not a regular CSA program? And it is because we understood that the farmers that we are working with right now are farmers that are not connected with these communities. That's why we do not ask for memberships or subscriptions. Also, these communities are new to CSA programs. So there has been a lot of educational work through farm visits, to weekly newsletters, emails, well, tons of emails, a lot of conversations in between the site hosts, or what we call also food ambassadors. They have been creating WhatsApp groups, they have been texting back and forth to the neighbors that they have, and it's been amazing. We understood too that this kind of online store, right, is pretty similar to other conventional online stores, and we gotta be competitive. So, but obviously without losing the direct connection, right, in between community members and farmers, and without jeopardizing our mission. Next, please. The impact. Definitely, farm increase revenue, e-commerce training. These are farmers that never thought in maybe getting into e-commerce, but right now they are feeling every day a little like more comfortable with that idea. That keeps the family members that are supporting them are definitely helping with that adaptation. Third, tangible opportunities for family members to be involved in the farm. Also direct connection in between farmers and community members. I think for most of them, this is the first time they are feeling the sense of community, right, is felt for the first time for all of them in general. Remember, these are wholesalers, or what we call wholesalers, or have wholesale operations, so they will just grow, harvest, and send them directly to the coolers. But right now, the fact that they can get directly feedback from community members from all these different neighborhoods have been also a good experience for them. And network expansion, as I shared a little bit earlier, is this project has created a good opportunity for these farmers to expand their network, building a business and friendship relation with other farmers in the region. So definitely this becomes, in my opinion, right, like a seed if in a future we want to organize them and kind of like work as a or having a co-op project. But definitely this has been one of the greatest results of this project or program. Then the tech world meeting our local ag world, right? Is most of the volunteers of these communities are computer scientists willing to share their tech knowledge. So like they are open to share their time and create new apps to make it to make processes a lot more easier and friendlier to use for farmers in our region. Well, I think that's it. Thank you. And if you have more questions, please, you can email me or text me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tania, or Tania, I'm sorry. Next, Andy Ollove will be talking about the Farm Fresh Food Relief Program that Fresh Approach is running in partnership with Pie Ranch and others.
Thanks, Lucy, and good morning, everyone. Good to see virtually so many of you making it after a 3-day weekend. I am Andy Ollove. I am the Food Access Program Director at Fresh Approach, a Bay Area nonprofit. Today, I'm going to talk about our USDA Farm Box program that as of this week is delivering 3,300 emergency CSA boxes a week in 7 counties, representing around $90,000 of local food procurement every week. So I'll talk a bit about where it started, how it got to where it is now, and where we see it going in the future. To start, though, just a brief background on Fresh Approach. That Fresh Approach is a Bay Area nonprofit working in food security and nutrition education programming with a foundation set around working in the local food system. Our programs, are primarily nutrition education focused in low-income communities and food access in low-income communities as well. So our Farm Box program starts with need. Back in March, as many of you know, everything changed and we saw the need increasing in multiple realms. One, food security and food insecurity. At that time, we were hearing that demand on food banks was increasing by 6 or 7-fold for all of those who lost work, for all of those who couldn't leave their house. Simultaneously, there was need from local and small farms who were losing business primarily to restaurants and also just a fair amount of uncertainty. And then the third need was also the need of our own organization to pivot programming that was no longer tenable with the increased restrictions around around shelter-in-place orders. So putting all those together, the challenge was really, what do we do now? How do we leverage our resources and adapt our programs to meet those growing needs? So our questions then were, how do we pivot while still retaining our mission? And our mission really didn't change. It's always been this, and that's on this slide. Our one was, how do we provide food to families who need it? And 2, how do we develop a project that's supporting farmers simultaneously? Next slide. So pretty quickly, we came to a model that was happening around the country, which is CSA boxes. It was a way to purchase produce and package it easily and distribute it to families. The question was, how do we do that? And I don't have it on the slide, but our project is very much rooted in collaboration. And as I'm sure many of you, this experience happened to many of you after in March, there were a lot of phone calls with peer organizations, with everyone trying to figure out what to do now. So on one of those calls with many people on it, there was an organization called Pie Ranch, which is a nonprofit farm with very overlapping mission. And we saw there being an opportunity between our organizations to work together for a few different reasons. One, because we were in a similar boat. We had to change our programs quickly. A lot of Pie Ranch's nonprofit programming was around farm education and farm visits. And now they had a cast of, or a team of employees who could no longer do that. That was similar experience for us. Another overlapping interest was our overlapping mission, which was to support local farmers and support our local food ecosystem. And three, we also just had really complementary resources. And so just getting to know them over time in various collaborative groups, we just had to get up and go, and we're able to find in March emergency funding from current funders looking to support food security. And so with that, we had the seedling of an idea, which is the box program. We had the money to start it up. And next slide. And it was, oh, maybe I jumped ahead in the slides. That's okay. The projects work sort of like this. Pie Ranch would source produce from multiple farms. Fresh Approach, having connections with other farms, were able to help make connections. They would source the produce. They would pack it on site on the farm using shelter-in-place ready procedures. And then they would distribute it to geographies that were at that point determined by the grant funder. And the model worked really well. It took a few weeks, but we were distributing the first week 100 boxes a week to nonprofits. And then over the next month beginning in April, added 100 boxes a week, so that by May, we were distributing 500 boxes a week. What we found in April, however, is that the funding streams were drying up for programs like ours because they became expensive very quickly, in that we were paying farmers market rate. So at that point, boxes were filled with food that was around $15 per box. So for 100 boxes, that's $1,500 a week. I don't know if I did the math right, plus a little bit more for overhead. And so at that time in April, the USDA announced funding for pretty much the exact same program. So what Fresh Approach saw being possible, or the question was, how do we scale it? And we couldn't scale it at Pie Ranch because as a relatively small farm, they saw themselves getting up to 1,000 boxes, but not being able to push more. But we saw working there, we thought was replicable across other organizations, and that we thought the model could work and scale if we recruited similar organizations that all had similar capacity as Pie Ranch. And I should say that picture is not what our boxes look like. That was from a stock photo back when I built this PowerPoint in April. So we, in a week turnaround time, recruited 7 other organizations, all of whom fit our a few key characteristics. One, they were mission driven to support local food systems, organics, and other related missions. And 2, they all had experience growing food or packing food or distributing food. So we felt good that they could all get out the door immediately with a box program. A few of them, like Vegilution and Edible Schoolyard and AIM, were actually already running a box program. So we successfully got the contract, next slide, and we're able to quickly to scale up. So there you can sort of see the timeline. In April, we were out the door with 100 boxes a week, and really were able to do a proof of concept to show that it could work and that it could work right away. We submitted our USDA application on May 1st, received word that we got it May 7th. And by May 15th, the project went from 1 partner to 8 partners, sourcing from more than 30 farms. And with that, we were able to greatly increase our capacity. and now push up to around 3,200 boxes a week. And on the right slide, you can see our impact to date, which is 500,000 pounds of food delivered, 46,000 boxes, and more than $1.5 million to farmers. And a project like this is really only because of the USDA investment, which came from the CARES Act. This was never going to be possible with any other pot of funding because philanthropy was only contributing pots of money anywhere between $15,000 and like $100,000, which is a lot and great, and was what was able to get us out the door with the project. But investment from the USDA was really what was important. And all told, I don't know how much time I have left. I forgot to set a timer. The project works really well. It works as a grassroots model. We modeled it after the Ecology Center, where Fresh Approach is really just the coordinating organization. And I think it works really well because each organization is given the leeway to define the program however fits their own mission. And in that way, we are able to include organizations like Vegilution, which is a small urban farm in San Jose that's distributing just 40 boxes a week, but really making them high touch, really community driven boxes. And then it can also equally incorporate Frog Hollow Farm, which is a big orchard in Contra Costa County, Brentwood, which is delivering 1,200 boxes. And for me, they're equal partners, and I'm able to incorporate them evenly. So for next, we feel like the model can scale again. And we recently just received another, we don't exactly know. We got approved to be a vendor for the continuation of the project. And we submitted an application that would increase our project again by 6-fold and potentially deliver up to 20,000 boxes a week across 14 partner organizations and more than 50 farms. And I think, this project has been rooted in collaboration, and would love to talk about that more because I'm positive that Fresh Approach would not have made it this far without all of our partners, and also without us respecting their expertise and their familiarity with their farms and communities.
Thanks, Andy. Next, we're going to switch gears. Our first two models have been rooted in the Bay Area. And our next presenter, Odile Morrison, will be talking about CalaverasGROWN in the Sierra.
Hi, my name is Odile Morrison. I'm a board member for CalaverasGROWN. We are a nonprofit in Calaveras County. We also serve some farmers in Amador County, our neighboring county. We're a nonprofit, and our aim is to help agricultural producers market their products. We are a purely volunteer and member-driven organization. We have a very active board and great membership, so it's really helped us pull this together very quickly. Our main goal is to bring our rural communities together to support the growth of agriculture and inject some life into our local economy. As you know, rural economies really suffer in times like these, and ours is no exception. Our members include farms, ranches, plant nurseries, wineries. We have some artists, cafes, and food distribution, little stores that are also members. Everything we do is funded by donations and grants, mostly small donations and grants, and our membership fees, which are very low. And we, over the last 5 years, have operated 2 certified farmers markets, one where we partner with master gardeners, hold it at their demonstration garden in San Andreas, which is the county seat, and one in Murphy's Community Park, where we partner with the community park organization there. And that is more of a tourist area. So our focus with the markets is to increase access to nutritious and locally grown food and other products, and also to provide our members with an opportunity to sell direct. We offer EBT Market Match, and we have a Market Bucks program funded by our local healthcare district, which creates a financial incentive to shop at the markets, and that helps us overcome the perception that farmers markets really are for well-off people as a kind of social and entertainment environment, which is quite prevalent here, and as we all know, not actually very accurate. So in early summer 2020, we added a new online service, which is what I'm talking about today. The aim was to increase access to the produce from the county, and also increase the business opportunities for farmers to sell direct. The reason we came up with taking this approach, it sounds very similar to what everybody else has been speaking about, is that we've been talking about doing a mobile market for a while, several years in fact, and we were having discussions about how COVID was going to affect our farmers markets. First of all, we weren't even sure that we could open until some very intensive and very appreciated lobbying, I think, by the Farmers Market Coalition and others to have the governor designate farmers markets an essential service. But for a while, we weren't even sure we could open. And then also whether customers would be willing to come to the markets with all the fears around COVID. So we thought to cater to those customers who didn't want to come to the market, we would start a mobile farmers market and deliver. We are a rural area. I think, yeah, maybe go to the second slide where you can see the county. We serve San Andreas, Angels Camp, Murphy's. As you can see, that's, you know, a fair round trip. It takes about an hour and a half round trip to service those areas down to Valley Springs. We still have areas that we're not servicing at the moment, which we're looking at expanding to. In common with a lot of rural areas, a lot of people already did shop online, and we wanted to capture some of that revenue and keep it in our local economy. Don't know if you want to go to the next slide and actually show the farmers market. Yeah. So basically, what we're doing is we have our online farmers market where customers can buy their CalaverasGROWN members products each week, and they can also select several different pickup locations, including our physical farmers markets. So we've had the farmers markets as a pickup location to increase traffic to those markets as well. So essentially, a customer builds their own CSA box from multiple producers. And we're looking to operate this year round, which is another development for us. In terms of the farmers markets usually end in October. This is creating an opportunity for our farmers to sell direct year round. And actually a lot of them have changed their planting practices and are looking forward to providing locally grown food year round, which they were not geared up to do prior to this. I thought it would be useful to just explain quickly how we managed to set up that we, like the other speakers, our organization reacted very quickly, and as it had been something we were considering doing anyway, we kind of had the idea of what we wanted to do, and the new situation kind of really was the impetus to just try it and see, and that is exactly what we did. So we had we were committed to having this as a no-cost benefit of membership for our farmers and other members. So there is no additional cost apart from our annual membership fee, which is $50. To enable us to do that, we actually had funds left over from the Butte Fire Recovery Fund. We had run a disaster response in 2015. A very large fire kind of tore through Amador and Calaveras counties and burnt 71,000 acres. We lost nearly 500 homes, and actually there are people who are still homeless here as a result of that fire. And so we had some funding left over that was earmarked for benefiting the community directly. And so we used those funds initially to finance, we've used an online app called Barn to Door, and so we pay the fees for that. At the moment, we are delivering using personal vehicles, but we have some allocation for renting vehicles if we need to do that. Some of the costs, advertising, bits and pieces. We also got some funding from our wonderful partners. We partner with Mark Twain Healthcare District, their commitment to kind of healthy eating. They give us funding every year. And also the Calaveras County local government provide the premises. The UC Master Gardener demonstration garden is on local government land. And yeah, so that made it possible for us to do this. And then our group of volunteers who really sprung into action and got everything going. The first thing we did was approach the market vendors, our existing farmers market vendors, to see if they were interested. And we initially had 5 vendors sign up. Now we have 14. We started off with very little variety. Actually, CalaverasGROWN was one of the vendors because we were selling our merchandise and other things to fundraise there. But now we have, as well as fruits and vegetables, we have beef, chicken, eggs, cheese, bread, baked goods, olive oils. We have master gardeners selling plants online, jams, honey, mustard, locally milled lumber products. It's a heavily forested area. We have local artisans producing art and other people producing soaps and other personal care products. So it really does look like a farmer's market. I think we moved to Tim's slide, which is fine, but
apparently our little bell is not coming through.
Sorry?
Our little bell is.
Am I done?
Yes, please.
Okay, can I just say one last thing?
Quickly.
Okay. So we're expanding our delivery service now, talking to the local bus service. And we also have local stores signing up to be pickup locations. Thank you.
Thank you, Odile. Our final panelist is Tim Page, who is the co-founder of Feed Sonoma.
Yes, good morning. Not sure if you can see me. I'm on site at one of the farms, so I apologize. I hope we have good enough internet connection here. Yeah, so Feed Sonoma was founded in 2011. You know, primarily our initial focus was to help a community of small farms to create a viable sense of revenue for themselves to achieve financial sustainability. And to that extent, the goal initially was always to become a cooperative. And here we are 9.5 years later, and we are a community of over 80 farms in this particular bioregion. And we are now officially a farmer and employee-owned fresh produce cooperative. I'm told that we are the first in the state of California with that designation. So let's hope that's the first of many. Brief history on Feed Sonoma is that we're always focused 100% on wholesale revenues for our farm community. We primarily service restaurants and markets and caterers and corporate campus kitchens. And on average, we were delivering to about 120 separate wholesale buyers per week, and that was generating 100% of our revenues. And yet to coincide with the birthing of the co-op this year, we had launched what we call the Feed Bin program, which is our multi-farm food box program. Once again, similar to a CSA, but CSAs are of course generally from one farm, and since our box is from multiple farms, we do not call it a CSA. But we had intended to launch the Feed Bin program to the public with actual birthing of the co-op itself. And then of course, like everyone else here, back in March, the writing was on the wall even before places were starting to get shut down, and we saw wholesale revenue starting to shrink. But we had been making about 100 feed bins per week on a trial basis with a small select community of buyers in our area. And of course, COVID basically forced our hand to kind of launch the feed bin program to the public prior to our plan. But yeah, basically, like everybody else here has experienced this dramatic growth spurt at the outset of their programs that affected us as well. I mean, we went from 100 feed bins per week for a year, and then by the first week of April, we were making 2,000. So, and I know that basically, I think one note that was mentioned at the very beginning was how we tend to have seen with COVID the increase with local CSA sales and the increase in sales with local produce. And I think that that is obviously true. And I think that, as they were just hinting at CalaverasGROWN, and I think all of us have been affected, but we, you know, definitely here in Sonoma County, we've had some sort of major crisis for the last 4 years in a row. And every time something happens, whether it's fires or floods or more fires and now pandemic and fires, you know, people tend to focus on foundational elements during every single crisis. And so I think that ultimately, I know one thing that we've been asked to meditate on are some of the challenges of these programs. And I think that you could ask every single farmer that has a sold out CSA program with a waiting list, and the same thing holds true with Feed Sonoma, is that we need to figure out ways, and that's where this collaboration becomes so important, but needing to figure out ways to continue the engagement with the public so that they continue to support programs such as the feed bin beyond this potential timeline with the pandemic, although this does seem to be continuing and will be into 2021 for sure. So I would say that, you know, that's one of the major focuses that we have. Like right now, we aren't necessarily focused on growth because we also do want to honor the local single farm CSA programs that we have here in Sonoma County. But as those farms potentially begin to diminish with their supply based on seasonality, I think that's really where the feed bin program then is able to kind of step up and hopefully continue that mission of feeding as many local families as we can with fresh local produce, because of the fact that we have that redundancy within our community itself. When you have a farm community of over 80 farms, that allows you to have a very robust and biodiverse crop plan on a countywide basis. And so if we are making these weekly feed bins at the moment, and we actually conduct 2 harvest and delivery cycles per week so that all the feed bins are supplied by the freshest produce possible. But when we construct those bins, we are averaging about 10 to 11 items per box. The cost of produce in each box varies between $20 and $23. I mean, we have very tight margins here at Feed Sonoma, and that's a whole nother side story. But really the other reason that we are here, besides revenue generation for the farmers, is to also build infrastructure to support this diverse food system. When you think about infrastructure for farm communities here in Sonoma County, there's been infrastructure for the monocrop cultures like apples in the past, and now of course vineyards with wine grapes, but yet there's never been a community supported infrastructure to support a community of 80 plus farms. And in this current environment, we still are not even close to being able to feed everybody in Sonoma County a truly local diet. So the feed bin itself becomes a microcosm of that mission. If we have 10 to 11 items per box, a lot of times you'll see up to 15 farms represented in each box based on number of units that they're able to supply per item. So what you have is in every feed bin a very dynamic microcosm of what it's going to take to feed people a local diet, which is a lot of small farms working together to make that happen. And so as I think Andy mentioned earlier, as we kind of venture into this continuing unknown with this current COVID pandemic, and knowing that other crises are always going to be arising in the near future, it's really going to take a kind of a bigger bioregion wide. If you think about the coastal redwood growing region, this is a massive bioregion that stretches from basically Big Sur up to Southern Oregon. And we do have an opportunity with our resources here to think creatively, you know, inside the box and also outside of the box, to stitch together this broad spectrum of growers. And, you know, we do focus on particular growing practices here at Feed, all of our farmers are either growing organically or beyond organically, regardless of whether or not they have an organic certification. And basically to us, you know, if our guiding light are indigenous watershed management practices, then that's how we view building the foundation of a food system for future generations, is to ensure that there is also an honoring of local ecology and local watersheds. And so thus what you're going to see, I think, is hopefully an ability for lots of small farms that have always relied on wholesale revenues, because many small farms do not inherently want to have the many moving parts of a CSA program. And so if we are able, as aggregators and distributors and food hubs, if we were able to stitch together a program of abundance and efficiency for the farmers, and can translate that farm-centric food system to the general public as a really a minimal weekly investment in their local food system that ends up being in their kitchen, that's our goal. Anyway, that's the bell. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I think that was a great way to leave us sort of looking at the whole food system. And I think at this point, I'll turn it over to Deanne to do the question and answer.
Thank you. What a wonderful panel. Thank you, Lucy, so much for gathering this incredible group of people. And if we could have them put their pictures back on, if we actually have video working, that would be fabulous. Rachel's going to deploy a series of 3 questions for those of you connecting in today. So you can answer those poll questions. And then if you have questions for our panelists, by all means, you can stick them in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. We do try to use our chat box for other purposes so we don't end up losing questions over there. I know we have a logical question that comes up in cases like this related to food safety certification, and if this has been a barrier for anybody. Specifically, Andy and Tim, if you could provide a brief, quick response to that, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, maybe Andy, if you don't mind, I'll step in first, just because like we mentioned in our rehearsal, you know, it's really interesting as far as the third-party food safety certification. I think out of our 80 farm strong community, we literally may have 1 that has a third-party food safety certification. Of course, that doesn't imply anything in regards to the actual practices. It just means that for a community of small farmers, and based on their revenue streams that don't require necessarily a third-party certification, that has not been a project that we've endeavored upon. So yeah, we potentially could be looking to a collaboration with Andy and his group to maybe get assistance in that as they ramp up significantly their program. So I'll hand it off to Andy there.
Yeah, good question. So the USDA in their Farm Box program requires that all food come from farms that have GAP certification, good agricultural practices, at least. So when we started back in April, we were sourcing from small farms, small Latinx growers in the South Bay who didn't have that, because there's a real barrier of entry for small farms, especially farmers market farms who don't really necessarily need a GAP certification. So when we got the USDA contract, we unfortunately had to stop purchasing from some of those farms and cast a net amongst our partners, especially over at CAF, who was really helpful to find who out there does have GAP certification, especially what Latinx, Latino immigrant farmers of color have it. So we were able to, through partnership, find that, but we also wanted to not leave out those farmers for good. So we worked with consultants at CAF, and also actually David Mancera, who works with KTA, who have expertise in GAP certification. We hired them to coach a handful of farms so that we could get them their audit so that they could participate in this program. That's could be a windfall for them. So we are still finalizing with the USDA a new contract, and it could be lasting much longer and growing in scale, such that we are committed to building out a more formal coaching process to bring more farms in, which for us has always been one of our missions, was how do we leave COVID-19 with a stronger food system? And this could be a really awesome opportunity for training and providing technical assistance.
Thank you. I want to call the attention for the panelists in the Q&A. There are a couple of questions. Feel free to go in and type your answer to either the answered question or the one that's still open, related to paid employees or the type of software that you're using. That way we can capture that information. And then I guess the next question really is related to collaboration and the importance of collaboration in your process. And each of you have touched on it a little differently. In time of permanent crisis, as Tim mentioned, where crisis is the norm now in Sonoma County, or whether we're just dealing with fire or whatever the crisis happens to be these days in California. How are you able to branch out and create new collaborations? I mean, I think Odile provided some phenomenal information that basically out of a really cruddy situation of a pandemic, they're now going to have year-round farmers markets that are done in a way that's profitable, hopefully, for the farmers, but at least in an organized fashion, and something that maybe perhaps people hadn't really thought about ahead of time. So are there some silver linings that you all are able to highlight?
Well, I would say for Feed Sonoma, you know, we are set up as a for-profit food hub simply because every single farm that's a member of our cooperative is a for-profit farm. So, you know, part of our initial mission statement has always been to be a lever for change within capitalism itself, but basically how for-profit business does business by focusing on a foundational element like food. And so, you know, because of that, we kind of have pigeonholed ourselves a little bit into being limited to our access to certain projects or fundings or grants or whatever it may be. And once again, I think just highlighting the fact that we have all these amazing nonprofits in our area that are also working on not only now distribution of food, but primarily have also been tremendously focused on advocacy for small farms. And I just really, the vision all along has always been to engage with folks such as CAF and now potentially Fresh Approach to help our type of small farm communities achieve kind of back-end infrastructure, such as a GAP certification that ultimately may not be tenable based on such small margins due to the cost of living and the cost of doing business in a place like Sonoma County. And I know we're all of our bioregions are affected by that cost of living. So I think that, you know, I think we've already touched upon it, but really I just need to highlight that once more, that the ability to have this multi-tiered, multi-dimensional collaboration that allows certain factors to focus on revenues and other factors to focus on earth stewardship and other factors to focus on making sure that all farms are up to the current standards for food safety, really as an important blending for a food system that moves into the 22nd century, really.
Does anybody want to add? Feel free, Odile.
Okay. Well, I'm probably not as experienced as everybody else in this panel in this particular area, but one of the things that's really struck me is I'm not from this community, obviously, but I have been here 10 years, but how everybody has pulled together, and I'm really hoping that we come out of this with an increased focus on developing our local economy and supporting local agriculture and local businesses and really selling what is wonderful about where we live, because we have seen a real interest in locally grown food that we really weren't seeing in any strength before. So I think the partnership with local government, the local healthcare district, UC Nutrition Education through their cooperative extension program, they're all very valuable. The local high school is also a vendor at our farmers market. So those kind of just really grassroots collaborations really strengthen the community and give kind of some joy to a community that's experiencing a lot of hardship and has, as Tim has said, we kind of seem to roll from disaster to disaster. So inject some joy and life into the community that I think is sadly lacking. So I really hope we retain that.
Well, and I think good nutrition is at the heart of much joy in life. So I certainly appreciate all the farmers that are involved in each of your organizations. And I'm hopeful that through your work and efforts and theirs, that they're able to continue. Andy?
Yeah, I would just say collaboration is just super foundational to our whole project. You know, as a network coordinator, we're not the ones moving the food, but all of our partners are. You know, prior to COVID and now we always sit on collaborative groups and working with overlapping missions, and it's a lot of great networking and connections, and that's how you get to know people, but often it's pretty abstract about how to collaborate. With this project, it's been amazing because the point of collaboration is actually the flow of food to communities and the co-sharing of resources from the federal government, which has really just strengthened network ties and built trust. And part of my mission as organizer is to trust our partner organizations to lead the way and set their own intentions. And in that regard, we have such amazing partners that each have overlapping missions, but each their own. So Sansuma is a school garden in San Rafael, and their part of the project has really been committed to delivering boxes to COVID positive families. Edible Schoolyard, their mission is very much organics, and have been pushing the messaging into their boxes about the importance of eating organics. Frog Hollow Farm wanted to use their project to build closer ties with the school district and potentially get traditional sales into cafeterias. So it's been really cool just coordinating a collaborative network that sends tendrils and resiliency in so many unexpected ways.
And collaborations take time and they take energy, and they over time will certainly generate lots of trust. They're not something that just happened because someone says, oh, let's go collaborate. It takes people, and the same people coming back to the table time and time again. And it's a huge investment. And I personally want to thank all of you for the investment that you put into this. I think in fitting with our webinar series, Tim said one word that sparked, at least in my mind, this concept of redundancy. And part of the challenges we have in our food system in the United States is we have a food system that's been put together to have at least cost food delivered to the masses, however it's delivered, which is not how we live, and it's not how we reach everyone. And so I think the question truly is for the food system itself is, how do we have a system that has sufficient amount of redundancy in it so that we have flood or fire or whatever else is disturbing the supply chain, that we're still able to produce food, to harvest food, to get it processed, and to get it delivered to those people who are consuming it, and that the consumers have sufficient financial ability to purchase the food they would like to purchase. So it's a huge, huge thing. As we close off here, I want to say thank you so much for taking part of your time to join us. More importantly, thank you so much for all the hard work and effort you do on a daily basis to make lives of Californians just much better. I'm going to drop into the chat box your contact information. I'm also going to drop into the chat box the link for our next webinar. 2 weeks from now, we'll have a panel talking about Victory Gardens Then and Now. This will be the 6th in our series. Rose Hayden Smith, who's retired from UC-ANR, has written a book on Victory Gardens, and she's done phenomenal work. Most people in California, I think, are well aware of her if they do anything in farmers markets. Missy Gable, who's the head of our Master Gardener program, will be here as well. as will Frida, who's now graduated from college, but she's the one who started the Let's Grow Healthy School program down in Southern California. So we thank you all for your contributions today and for those who've attended, and we hope you're all safe and your families are safe, and our thoughts are certainly with all of our first responders, whether they're on fire lines or whether they're in the medical professions. So tonight at dinner, let's think about our farmers who produced our food, and let's be grateful for what we do have in California. Thank you for joining us.